Hello, my name is Saurabh and I'll be showing you very quickly how to create a concept art for the reference of your landscape matte painting. I'm starting from scratch with a very basic grid. As you can see, I'm taking up a very desaturated and basic sky color, and on that, with a very contrasting green, I'm just making a very simple perspective grid with the line tool. Note that the pivot point was on the horizon line, and just playing with the transformation tool. I'm putting them in multiply mode and lowering the opacity down so that it doesn't really interfere with the visibility while you're painting. So a little more desaturated color for the sky layer. And taking up a new layer and defining my brush. I'm using this very basic chalky brush that comes default with your Photoshop. If you like, you can go for the fancy brushes that comes as preset, and you have them on internet for free, but they don't really make you a better painter, they merely make you a faster painter. Okay, so I'm creating a very basic gradient for my sky here, and as you can see, it's not really very simple to make a realistic gradient. Anyways, now it's time to put some shapes for your distant mountains, and note that I'm taking the color right from the palette and I'm just playing with the saturation value of the colors. So this is just a value difference, not really a color difference, that gives you the sense of the sea depth in your painting. So as things come closer to the camera, they appear to be more and more saturated. That is the key. Okay, so at this point I really like to experiment with the shapes and the saturation values until I'm satisfied with the overall look of my composition. One more thing is that you should never fall in love with your painting, otherwise you won't be able to improvise. I'm taking some color sample right from the sky and just adding a little bit of variation, color variation, as well as value variation to paint these little highlights on top of these distant mountains. And if you study and sample good photographs, you'll see that at the distant mountains near to the ground, you'll be having a lot of haze and dusts and things like that. So I'm trying to add in that kind of feel and a little bit of color variation to this region. Okay, like that. And at this point I'm really open to jumping between the layers and back and forth and making corrections and adjustments. It's very important to maintain a proper structured layer preset for your painting. I like to club them together, and one more thing is that I really like to flip my canvas horizontally every now and then, and by doing it you know whether your painting is in balance or not. Alright, so clubbing them together. Okay, in the mountain group I have all those layers related to the mountain, so if I need to correct anything I'll just go into that layer and correct it. Okay, so let's put in some more saturated colors, and now I'm starting to play with the shapes here because I don't really want this painting to be a very flat regular kind of mountain landscape. I'm trying to give it some degree of awkwardness, maybe something funny, something interesting for my overall composition. Okay, so coming closer to the camera, now here you can see that I have made a mistake. There is a duplication of the shapes and I don't really want that, so just going in and erasing these things. I prefer to go with more regular shaped mountains, and I'll think of something else to make it a real bit different than a normal landscape. So that's the beauty of having structured layers. You can go and correct and erase, you can mask or do whatever. You can change your painting anytime. Alright, so I'm adding some sense of dusts and playing with the light direction. Right now you can see I have a sense of a very warm orange kind of highlight, and some lights are bouncing from those distant plains and I'm not very sure whether to put a water body out there or whether to make it a very barren landscape. Let us see. Okay, so let us paint some more foreground elements with even more saturated color and define the light and shades. Okay, so I've decided to go with a barren landscape, no water. Okay, and in that region I think I can put something really interesting like a flying object. Now I give you some freedom to decide whether it is a spacecraft or some sci-fi flying object made by humans. Okay, so let us not define it properly and leave it on the viewer and his or her imagination to figure out what it is really. Let's add some details and some nice shining highlights on the edges like that, and let's paint some rays. Okay, that will be bounced on the ground beneath it. Okay, it's really very easy and faster way to paint your spacecrafts. And some more elements in the foreground. I'm not really satisfied with the depth of this painting, so I need more saturated foreground elements to signify the distance between the camera and that region. You can see I've placed some characters, but they're not helping that much, so I need a bigger character here standing and just defining the distance from the camera. Okay, so yes, that is it, and again I'm putting in some details. So that's how you make a concept art painting. Once you're satisfied, now you can proceed and add textures and more details, fine tune it, and have a movie ready realistic matte painting.